The administrative challenge for offering CAR T therapy starts with the initial negotiation between the center which is going to offer CAR T therapy and the company which makes CAR T cells. So this can be a very time-consuming process. There is a contractual process. This is set up in a way so that the standards for collecting cells, storing cells, freezing and receiving cells, and then getting them ready for administration, they meet whatever the requirements are for the company. There can be logistic challenges as well, because the same apheresis facility which will be doing and which will be collecting and handling cells for CAR T therapy would also most likely be doing a collection of stem cells for autologous and allogeneic transplant. So we need to come up with processes where the standards for CAR T therapy are certainly met, but they also don't interfere the functioning of the apheresis facility and the whole team taking care of things. The next part of it is the clinical challenges. So it is very important to have a team of providers, physicians and advanced care providers who would be able to screen and find patients who are eligible for CAR T therapy, manage them through the waiting period between collection of cells and having the CAR T product which is ready, and then administering the CAR T therapy and then managing them through the side effects. This also needs a tremendous amount of coordination between the hematology team as well as the intensive care team and the neurology team, and for them to also understand the algorithms and protocols which are in place for management of CRS and neurotoxicity. So we need to have a lot of education for this, but across the different teams, and really good coordination to manage the team from the time of consultation till they are out of the toxicity period. So those are some of the clinical challenges. There are other things which are very important. It's critical to have tocilizumab, the IL-6 receptor antagonist, being available for patients who are getting CAR T therapy 24/7 in the facility, because the need may happen on a Friday night or on a weekend, and irrespective of when it happens, if appropriate, the drugs should be available. And it's also important for us to understand that most of the toxicities, even though they could be common, are reversible, and there is very little mortality which has been seen on the clinical trials. So as a team approach, it should be important to take care of the patient even if they are critically ill, with the hope of reversing this toxicity so that they can get a good outcome at the end. So that takes a team effort between the team which is taking care of the patient, the ICU team, the neurologist, and the patient and their family.
Our CAR T-cell program grew kind of within our lymphoma disease-based team, but within our lymphoma disease-based team, we also round on our allo transplants and our leukemia. So it is one kind of net of patients. And so we are a FACT-accredited facility, and I think FACT accreditation is an important part to the CAR T-cell and being CAR T-cells and being able to do CAR T-cells. With regards to going through the and using the approved constructs, each one of them individually has a REMS program. For Axi-cell, I had to go through a REMS-based program. For T-cell, I had to go through a REMS-based program now and take my test and pass it. And we really broke it down to, I think different institutions are going to do different things with regards to the REMS, who needs to be there. And we really said who needs to be educated about CAR T-cells, and then who needs to do the REMS program. And we really came at it from the prescriber should be doing the REMS program, the person who's dispensing the CAR T-cells, which in our case is the cell manufacturing facility and personnel, and then those who are administering the CAR T cells, and that would be our nurses. And so all three of those people, or those groups of people who fit underneath that umbrella, did the REMS program. Now, we did take our advanced practice providers, and they did the REMS program for extended education. But they are getting education from people like myself or my colleagues who are also treating patients with CAR T cells. Now, we're also going out there and educating our neurologists. We're educating our ICU staff. We're reaching out to our emergency room and educating them about what are some of the adverse events that could occur with CAR T cells. And that we want to be called, we want to be informed when a CAR T cell patient is either brought to the ICU or directly admitted to the ICU or comes into the ER. And we have several strategies that we've employed in order to help facilitate that. And I think that that's one of the things that makes, when we talk about best practices or how do you develop best practices, is you have to really think about CAR T cell care and the management of patients with CAR T cells as a team. It doesn't just start with me, who's the prescriber, or the nurse who administers it. It's truly a team event, and we've taken that to the level of creating CAR T cell pagers, so that if a patient shows up in our emergency room, there is a direct page sent to a pager to notify the person on call that there's a CAR T cell patient in the ER. We've also worked with our IT department to come up with a banner or a headline that says, as soon as that patient is checked in to a location like our emergency room, this is a CAR T cell patient, please dial this number, so that at least we can be involved in the decision-making process to help discern, is this neurotoxicity versus another event? Is this cytokine release syndrome versus another event? We've also really taken a lot of time to really make sure that the access to, did a patient experience neurotoxicity? Did a patient experience cytokine release syndrome? And how were they treated, by creating shortcuts embedded within our electronic medical record? So I think that really you have to think globally with a complex treatment like this. You can't just do it yourself. You have to have a team around you, and we experienced that and grew through that with our clinical trial experience and our ongoing clinical trial experience, and really used that as a bridge to our commercial experience to develop a team that is led, and meets very frequently with physicians. And we also have a nurse case manager who helps navigate our CAR T cell patients through the kind of the pre-apheresis, apheresis, post-apheresis, infusion, and then inpatient. They're paying attention to, are they having CRS? Are they experiencing neurotoxicity? How was it managed? What are their counts doing? And so that segues very nicely to the post-CAR T cell outpatient experience to help manage and understand what their CAR T cell was inpatient, and try and transcend that into better outcomes and better management as an outpatient. You want to have the people educated that need to be educated, but I don't necessarily think you can ask the ICU doctor to manage, go ahead and manage the CRS or neurotoxicity, and I'm going to take a step back and you let me know when you've handled it. I think that in the CAR T cell space, we want to be involved, and we want to help in the CRS and the neurotoxicity events, and we want to at least be in the discussion about what the differential is, because it may not be CRS. It may be gram-negative Rab sepsis. It may not be neurotoxicity. It may be the uncovering of another neurologic disorder that wasn't known before. If they aren't asked, that is CRS part of the differential? Is potentially a neurotoxicity from CAR T cells part of the differential? That could get missed, and we don't want that.
I think that there's two facets to CAR T research. One is clinical research, which I think has to go on. Just because we have 2 and soon perhaps 3 products that are approved doesn't mean that we should stop doing research and clinical trials with these agents. So I think to build a research program, one has to have a robust clinical research team and the means to carry out pretty complicated clinical trials. In the community setting, or in the commercial setting, if you will, I think building a CAR T program is perhaps similar to what we've done and what centers have done with stem cell transplantation. One has to have a team that's experienced in the use of these cellular products. I think it's important that accreditation from FACT, which is the Stem Cell Transplant Accreditation Agency, is beginning to apply now to cellular therapy, including CAR T. I think you have to have, for clinical trials, regulatory systems in place. And I think for the commercial use, you have to have the appropriate so-called REMS training so that everybody involved in the care of these patients has an idea of what to expect in terms of toxicity. I think down the road, especially as the cost of these things evolves, we're going to be looking for ways to give this so it's not as costly, and perhaps doing this as an outpatient, I think is feasible. We're just beginning to do that. I know they're doing that at the Hutch in their immunotherapy center, and there are some institutions that are beginning to treat patients as outpatients, just like is done for some stem cell transplant patients. And I think having CAR T as part of an existing ongoing stem cell transplant program is probably the right idea.